that he was in, Billy West and the Grief Counselors. So I hope you enjoy that, and I hope you enjoyed the whole interview. Well, I wanted to ask you first, how did you get into acting?
Let's see. I started out as a musician, actually. I learned to play guitar. Well, actually, let me start with trumpet. I learned to play trumpet when I was about 10. And then I sang a lot, like in glee clubs and choirs. And then I learned how to, actually, I picked up my first guitar in 1961. It was this grubby little Stella guitar that used to hang around in our cellar. And kind of was in and out of interest. I didn't know how to tune it. But then in 63, I got another guitar, and eventually I learned how to tune it, and by 66 I was starting up my first band. And after that, I started to get better and better, and I kind of, moved up the rungs in my little town and, started to play dances and eventually nightclubs. And that was my life, That's basically what I did. Made a living playing music for many years. And then, but on stage I used to do voices and everything, because when I was a kid I used to do, Tourette out voices and noises and all kinds of stuff. And, it just kind of popped out of me when I would be on stage with a band. And, eventually when the band stuff was over, I needed to find a real job, and I kind of fell into radio through a friend of mine who was installing burglar alarms for a living, and he installed some stuff over at this disc jockey, Charles Laquadera. He was a famous guy in Boston who had the morning show at WBCN. And he had a cassette of me screwing around, and he played it for him. And the guy said, have him come in, call him. And so I started going into WBCN in Boston for nothing and doing bits on the morning show, and eventually it led to a full-time job. And then in 1989, I got out of there, and I started doing cartoons. Like 1988, I did a short-lived version of Beany and Cecil, which was, the old Bob Clampett thing, and ABC was going to revive it, and it lasted about 5 or 6 episodes, but Chris Falusi produced those. Actually, he was given the assignment to do the show. And it lasted, like I said, 6 episodes or something close to that, and so I decided to get out of Boston around that time. It was time to move. Then I made a lateral movement. Our sister station in Manhattan, in New York City, knew that I wanted to get out of there, and they were amenable to having me come there, but that was also the station that Stern was on. And so that's how I met him, and I spent a great deal of time coming into his show in the mornings and, just organically ripping it up and not caring how far we took things. I mean, we were just pushing the bar. It was like a bunch of kids playing all the time. That's what I liked about that atmosphere. Howard was never afraid to take chances, and we'd push each other. And let's see, 1995, I left there because I had already started doing a couple of Nicktoons. One was Doug, and one was Ren Stimpy. And that got me really get going on commercials and doing, looking for other cartoon work, because I guess I was kind of suited for that. And, did tons of projects after that. I was never formally taught to act. There was no voice schools, let's put it that way. And acting school, it never dawned on me. I took a couple of classes when I first went to New York. I went over to Stella Adler's and crammed reading just volumes of material, Man and Superman, George Bernard Shaw, prologue to Henry V and everything else after it. And, I tried to cram in as much stuff as I could, and I took what I needed and I left. I didn't stay very long. And that's kind of where everything fell for me, and just went off on my own and started auditioning for stuff. And eventually I moved out to Los Angeles after being in New York.
So how did Ren and Stimpy come about? What was that? Just you just went in for a cold audition and ended up getting the part, or how did that come to be?
Oh no! What happened was I had a friend that I grew up with in Boston, Andy Paley, great musician, great producer, and he knew one of the Clampetts, Ruth Clampett, was the daughter, and Sodie was the mother. That Bob Clampett produced the Beany and Cecil cartoons originally, created them, and they found John Kay and wanted to do them. They were going to bring it to ABC television, and there was so many warring factions over that. There was Jenny Trias, head of children's programming, and with their ridiculous children's programming edicts, like all of a sudden, Josie and the Pussycats, you couldn't throw a cat in a bowl of spaghetti, because they thought kids would throw their cat in a bowl of spaghetti, that old shit.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah.
Never occurred to me to do that, nor did it ever occur to me to burn my house down if I saw it in a cartoon,
Right, or hit someone with an anvil, or...
Yeah, but it's so insulting to kids because they're born learning machines.
Right.
And then we dumb them all nice and down, and, we're off to the races. I got asked by John Kay, and the family. They got word to John, and they said, we want to use this guy. So it was me and Maurice LaMarche, and we were recording them in Vancouver, and I was still living in Boston. And we did the episodes, like 5 of them or something, and then it was dumped, and that's how that started. But people had started calling me, like at the very same time, a guy named Jim Jenkins called me to be the voice of this character he created called Doug, and it was a Nickelodeon show. Both of them were actually Ren and Stimpy and Nickelodeon. But John Kay remembered us doing Beany and Cecil, and he sent me some pictures of the Ren and Stimpy characters. And, I auditioned for both of them, and he wanted to use me. He auditioned everybody, I guess, in town, and he had me listen to these tapes of, like Peter Lorre and Burl Ives and all these, Kirk Douglas. And he was always intrigued with the Larry Fine from the Three Stooges impression that I did, but you couldn't have him sound like a depressed old Jew, so, he had to kind of live in the cartoon parameters, that universe, so we amped him up a lot. And that went for about 5 years, but they got rid of John Kay into the second season almost. And Doug was still going. We did 4 seasons of that. And that's how the whole, getting into the cartoons kind of started.
So with the voices, is that generally how it works? Do they kind of, you go in for an audition and they say, this is what I have in mind, like Larry Fine, but, not as sad, or is there a specific idea? Or you build a voice out of nothing for them. You just come in cold and throw a bunch of shit at the wall, and if they see the practical application, they'll let you know about it because they're always enthusiastic, and there's emotional resonance about what they have created and what they want to do. And I usually go in, take a look at the character. Like a real good look at it. Here's some descriptions about what, where the character stands in life. Is it insecure? Is it bombastic? Is it schizophrenic? Is it, sociopathic or childlike or whatever the description is? And I kind of weigh them up in my head and give them an interpretation of what I think, they might be looking for. And are the voices usually pretty fully formed for you at the beginning, or are you someone who tinkers with them, and do you kind of...
I tinker with stuff all the time. It's kind of every character is a work in progress. You watch the 3rd episode of The Simpsons, and you watch the 700th episode or whatever. The voices sound totally different.
Yeah, Homer especially changed.
Yeah, but that just happens, and I kind of like that because it means it's a work in progress.
And
kind of a living thing.
And so does that just come
from you doing the voice over and over again, and you start picking up on things, or what is it that causes it to change?
You know what it is? It's like, it's sort of a sneaky redo, because you're discovering what the character should be. You know, what it should have been in the very beginning. You finally hit on it, and it hits the sweet spot, and then you stick with that.
And so
it happens in most cartoons.
So for Futurama, with you doing so many voices, how did you audition? Like, how did that work? Did you come in and they...
Well, the audition call went out, and they wanted me to come over and audition at Fox for Futurama, and I walked in the room, and it was like, excuse me, excuse me, allergies today. I walked in the room, and there was about 150 people in there. You know, I saw guys like Ryan Stiles, and I was like, oh, Jesus, let me out of here. And, you know, and all my voice pals were up for those roles. And they bring in, you know, Lori Petty from Tank Girl, you know, like a zillion years ago.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, I mean, everybody was over there, and I was excited to meet Matt Groening because I had never met him. And he knew who I was, and I was just like, you know, I know who you are, too. And I just, they gave me pictures of the characters and described them a little bit, and what do you think? And I read some stuff for them, and I wound up getting 4 roles.
So what made you decide, because Fry is very similar to your own voice, what made you decide to sort of stay close to your voice for him?
Because I remember myself when I was 25, and I wasn't, you know, I was kind of I don't know, I was wild, but I didn't know how to express myself. You know, I had all these great thoughts and everything, but I just couldn't articulate them. For some reason, they wouldn't come out right, and I thought that was charming for a character to have, especially like an everyman. And you know, and he's well-meaning and everything, and he is a little stupid. I mean, I thought I knew everything, and I was stupid about so many things. It isn't funny, but that was what I sounded like when I was 25. I remember I was always whining, like when I was in a band. It's like, fuck, I broke a string, you know, whining. You know, when are we going to get the equipment in here? This afternoon or tonight? What's the matter with you people? You know, I remember sounding like that.
So where did the other voices come from? You know, like Zapp Brannigan and Zoidberg.
Zapp Brannigan was an amalgam of all the big dumb announcers that I heard growing up, and some of them I actually worked with in radio. They were still around, you know. Those guys that carry their balls in a wheelbarrow, you know, and love far away above anything else in this world the sound of their own voice. Yeah. And they stretch out words longer than they should be. They swing with every pitch, and I thought, I'm going to try this for Zapp Brannigan. So I took a couple of characters that I knew in radio and sort of put them together, cold fused them or super collided them, whatever the description is apt. But Zapp was like, you know, Kif, I let them in. I've made it with a woman. Meh. And just trying to sound like those old guys.
And for Zoidberg, how did you come up with that?
Zoidberg was a mashup of the old Yiddish theater actor and movie actor Lou Jacoby, who talked like he had marbles in his mouth. You know, he'd be like, you know, I remember in the movie Arthur.
Oh yeah.
With Dudley Moore, Lou Jacoby is like a neighbor or something or somebody, but he looks at Arthur and he goes, "What's it like to have all that money?" And you know, he was that guy. And then I fused him with a vaudevillian comedian named George Jessel, who also had a marble mouth. You know, he was like, ladies and germs. And so when you put the two of them together, you go, young lady, bring me a sandwich from the dumpster and leave the nuggets on it. Robert.
So when you guys record the show, do you do each part individually, or is it done like a radio play? How is that show recorded?
We try to always record as an ensemble, but some people can't be there, and you just kind of skip their parts. But there's an energy that's in the room.
Yeah, I would think that would make a difference to actually have...
Oh, there's a lot of play going on and give and take, and just like, when the machine is off, when the recorder is off, we, we'll just start talking about current events, and we'll start doing voices and, making fun of everything under the sun and just getting a mess of laughs, and that kind of translates, that energy translates into what you're about to do for real, like the reason you were there.
And did they?
And I hold them all in such high esteem. You just don't know. I mean, it's like going to school. I learn something every day from my friends, my peers.
And do they let you guys play around? Is there any room to ad-lib during the recordings, or is it pretty strict to the script?
No, it's pretty strict to the script because they work that so hard and deliberately and want it to be as perfect as they can get it. And every now and then somebody will have an idea, and you'll just hold your hand up like school and say, I have an idea if you want to try it, and they welcome it, And if it's good, they'll put it in. If it's not, it's the cutting room floor.
And so what is it like when you're doing multiple voices? I mean, obviously you're having conversations with yourself. Does that get weird? Does it get hard to keep track of the voices, or are you pretty good at being able to switch from one to the other?
I could do it pretty naturally because I loved puppets. I used to just make puppets out of nothing when I was a kid, and I used to do the voices for them, and, do these little made-up shows on the spot, for my friends or in my house for myself or whatever. And, I loved characters, and I loved disappearing in them. I loved committing to them, and so doing them back to back was a good challenge, and it kept me on my toes. Ren and Stimpy, I'd do one character and then go through the script as another and maybe three others. But Doug was done as an ensemble, and I did everything in real time, back and forth from, Roger Klotz, the bully kid, to Doug, who was a sweet, painfully shy 11-and-a-half-year-old, that kind of sweet kid.
Have you ever?
And Futurama has done ensemble, and which means in real time. So I've gone 4 pages in a row talking to myself.
Have you ever done the wrong voice?
Characters. Sorry?
Have you ever done the wrong voice?
Yes. Yes, it happened once about, 6 or 7 years ago, and the room stopped dead. We were doing the table readings. And there's a giant audience in there, all the people that work on the show, and invited guests to come and watch us, doing the table reading. One time I blanked out, and the voice came out of me as a different character than it should have been, and everything stopped dead, though. It was like, what? And I said, this is how it starts, I guess. I just hope I go quietly in my sleep tonight. So
what was it like? I mean, with Futurama, you guys were canceled and you went away, and then you had the DVD resurgence at first, and then now you're back on Comedy Central. Just what was it? Sort of, I guess, the whole journey of it, of not thinking the show was going to come back, and then getting to come back for the movies, and then now being back as a regular series.
It was wonderful. I mean, it's the best show that I've ever done, in my opinion, and a lot of others on the show feel the same way. It's the most satisfying thing I've ever done, and I have a lot of respect for everybody on every level that does this show. We all contribute. We all are part of the orchestra of it all. And, it was like getting canceled was like, really? Because I couldn't see my friends anymore. And, when they brought it back, I thought, oh, this is great. We'll just start up again. But it was a kind of schizophrenic thing there for a while. Are we doing it or are we not doing it? Are we going to be characters or not be characters? And, that kind of feeling. But I thought it was wonderful when we did go back to do it and kept doing it. And I have to thank all the fans, though, for bringing that show back. I mean, it was the fans that did it. It was a this giant force that the network couldn't ignore.
And what do you think? Do you think it was just a show that was ahead of its time? Do you think it wasn't promoted right, or do you kind of have, like, why do you think it didn't work the first time, or didn't stay around the first time, and it took a while for them to realize, oh wait, there's a huge audience for this, and everybody loves this?
There was a mysterious style of promoting the show. Like, they'd say, tonight on Fox, an all-new Malcolm in the Middle starting at, no, wait a minute, it would say, tonight on Fox, 7 p.m., Futurama, followed by an all-new, Malcolm in the Middle, and followed by a brand new episode of The Simpsons, and then they'd say, remember, the fun begins at 7:30.
Did they really say that?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's not a big, vote of confidence for your...
It was like the Casey Kasem thing, 7:30.
Right. Yeah, it's...
The fun begins at what?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people weren't even maybe aware of the show until it started the actual seasons were released on DVD and stuff. I don't know if it was a promotions thing or what. But
there are people that are still discovering that the show is on, like it's a brand new thing to them.
Right.
Which is great. I mean, because now enough time has gone by, I go to these conventions and these, some giant burly guy will come up with, big giant handshake and, how you doing? And I go, hey, how are you, sir? And he goes, I just want to thank you for when I was a kid, for all the laughs. And I mean, I love hearing that. I'm totally touched to my soul when somebody says that, nothing but filled with gratitude. But it's freaking me out because the time goes by so damn fast.
Right.
Yeah.
So how often do you get, I would think especially with Fry, do you get recognized by your voice from time to time, or how often?
A lot of times, yeah, from time to time. I'm glad, I kind of love doing what I do. I never had any interest. To tell you the truth, I never thought about being a celebrity. I just didn't. I was so passionate about what I did. I just wanted to bring something to the table so badly that the idea of being famous was foreign to me, because when I was growing up, my heroes were artists, not celebrities.
Right.
And to this day, when they use celebrities in cartoon movies, animated features, it's like, wait a minute, this is crazy. I mean, we always would go in and they'd say, we got this bar of lead on the table. Can you turn it to gold for us before you leave? And, yeah, sure, zing, and then leave. And then when celebrities come in and they say, we got this bar of lead on the table, can you turn it to gold before we leave? And they go, yeah, where's my $20 million? And they leave and it's still a bar of lead. There's no alchemy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no magic that seems to take place. And I go, well, where is the friggin' art?
Yeah, I've always wondered about that too. I guess I never understood the logic of, if you're doing like an animated children's movie, it's not like there's a kid out there that's like, oh, I'm going to see this because Brad Pitt is doing a voice, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but you know what? I know voice people who are actors, trained actors that can piss circles around any of these celebrities. I'm not kidding.
But that's what I'm saying. I don't understand the desire to have a name, I guess. Like, I don't see what that... Like, I would think you would want someone who can do a voice and make a character, because that's what kids are going to remember, versus, like... Kids don't care if a celebrity is doing the voice.
No, the networks don't want variables. They don't want to have things that they have to worry about, like finding the right voice, and did we make a mistake, and aesthetically, how is this going to go over, and they want to skip that process. And so they made up they couldn't co-opt that as well as they wanted to, so they need a formula. Everybody has to have a formula, so they say, put celebrities in your movie, it equals success, except that it doesn't always equal success. It can be a total, gutter ball.
So the The other thing I wanted to ask you about, too, I was just kind of curious, from time to time when you do, like, established voices, I know you did, like, Space Jam, you did Elmer Fudd and Bugs Bunny. I was just curious, how do you, if you're not making up the voice yourself, if you're not creating it from scratch, what do you listen for if you're doing more of an impression, or how do you find those voices?
Well, I think most voice people start off trying to mimic styles of people who influence them. I think it's a natural. So I could do a pretty good job with, like, Warner Brothers characters. I didn't have all of them down totally, but in my heart of hearts, I didn't really want to be an impressionist, I didn't want to wind up as a footnote, spend my whole life as a voice guy and wind up as an inscription on a watch or something. I wanted to make some noise, and I wanted to be in everybody's face when I moved to New York. I was like a Terminator. I would audition for everything and anything. And, and then they started looking for, guys who could create a character for them rather than sound-alikes, because a lot of the impressionists couldn't create a character.
Right.
And you'd be sunk if you had to, it's just like, I'm going to use this voice. But what you can do creating original characters, you can take famous people and styles that you recognize and just throw them together in a test tube. You can take some piece of showbiz periphery, some guy, and fuse him with the energy and exuberance of another person in show business or famous voice. And even a lousy impression is a voice no one's ever heard before.
Right.
So, there's ways of getting to some kind of originality. And you just keep hoping, even though there's nothing new under the sun, you keep hoping that you can continue being somewhat of a hybrid of everything that's gone down.
Well, so obviously you still have Futurama going, but what else, is there anything left that you still really want to do, or what going forward?
Yeah, I want to produce and write shows. Animated shows, which I've been doing. I have a project going, and we're starting to animate it, and we'll see what happens with it. I work with my partner, is an animator, director, writer, producer, came from Ren and Stimpy days, Jim Gomez, and we're working on stuff, and we have been working on like 4 or 5 things, and they got some interest, and so one of them is going off to be animated, like small parts, like a demo.
Right.
And, I'm hoping that will allow me to just be able to expand what it is I have to offer, a network or a company.
Can you talk about the one that's going forward, or is it too early?
No, I can't yet, but, hopefully you'll be watching it and wanting to interview me about that. That's the ideal situation.
Yeah, well, is there a way, like, for people to follow you, or if people want to keep up with what you're doing, do you do Twitter or have a website or anything like that?
No, you know what, I used to have a website, and I made the terrible mistake of just being too accessible.
Right.
And I was being driven crazy. It was like walking into a hive full of bees. There's a usual, you suck, I'm better than you, and, and I'd be like, I had to answer back, and I go, what's it like being 7.5? I forget.
Right. That is, yeah, it's...
No, and I had a couple of dangerous people, and you get into that whole thing, and it's like, screw that, I don't want to be a moving target. But it is important to have a website, so I won't have a forum, and I could just keep everybody informed that has an interest in what I do. And thank God, what are the odds against people following what you do for a living? It's got to be 1 billion to 1.
Right.
And I totally know that, and I talk about it with my other friends, my other, voiceover people. What are the odds? This is, we're just so thankful and have so much gratitude that we can actually work and do this, and not, fall off the face of the earth in spite of the celebrity invasion.
What do you think you'd be doing for a living if you never got into acting?
I'd probably try to keep being a musician. But that was getting tougher and tougher. And now I understand that if you're a young guy and you play and sing, you've got to be in 5 bands.
Right.
To try to make any money at all or try to make a name for yourself. That's whacked, you know?
Yeah. How do you still play pretty often, or how often do you actually get to...
I have a room full of beautiful guitars that I love, and every now and then I get to play and crank up the amplifier. But I tried having a band, and it's just too hard. It's too hard. You know, you got to have the energy, and you can't have responsibilities. That's what the beautiful part about being in a band was years ago. You know, you had total abandon. You'd just say, all right, first we're gonna get some instruments, and we're gonna, you know, take over the block, and then we're gonna take over the city, and then we're gonna take over the country. And all we got to do is learn how to play these things. And it was a wonderful feeling, though. That feeling of you have no idea where you're going or what you're going to do. There was magic about that. And then when you have tons of responsibilities in life and commitments and everything, you miss the romantic notion of the way it felt to be out there, you know, just shooting from the hip, playing every night, playing every gig. I do miss playing with other people, and that's hard to get together. You know, because everybody, I mean, when I think about it, it's ridiculous. You know, it's like I'm 60 years old, and it's like I want to go over to my buddy's house and knock on the door. Hey, you want to jam? You know.
I feel like you could do that. I feel like you should do that.
I probably could, but I don't know. I'm one of those people that never grew up or something, you know. I still never felt like, I don't feel like an adult.
Right.
You know, and I do realize that the day you lose your ability to play and have that kind of freedom, that's when you become a geezer. Good news, everyone. I'm a geezer.
Tell me something that most people don't know about you.
Let's see. Oh boy, this is weird. Oh, that I had chronic low-level depression since birth.
Oh, really?
Yes. I had no idea what life was really like until I was about 50, and I was treated for depression, and I felt so horrible. I wanted to kick my own ass once I realized what real life was like. Because when I was growing up and I was a younger adult and beyond that, I would look at everybody else and I say, look at these people. They don't do what I do. They don't hide in the shower and sit down like a fetus, you know, and can't come out. I said, you know, and yet everybody goes through this, so I must be a big pussy. I can't, you know, deal with life on life's terms, and all these people can somehow. You know, so you beat yourself up. You have no idea that almost none of those people knew what it felt to be chronically depressed. And it's a miracle I actually lived to be doing what I'm doing, because I was, there's a blackness to all of that. No matter how hard you try to be happy, it's like it crushes you to the floor. And to me, that was normal life. I didn't know any different from that. So how I ever managed to achieve or do anything is beyond me.
Wow. Yeah.
But it got better, you know, once I was being looked at about depression, because women have always been my best teachers in life. And I met a woman therapist who got a load of me for about a few months, and she said, have you ever been treated for depression? I said, no, why would I want to do that? And she said, because the way you talk, the way you describe things, and that you're emotional, and, you know, not that that's a bad thing, but she said, did you ever go to see if that might be something that's going on? I said, no, and she gave me a card for this guy, and next thing you know, I find out at 50 years old that I had had chronic low-level depression since birth. And it was hideous, and I never realized how hideous was, you know. It's all relative. So I was being treated for it, but before I took it, this guy said, oh no, you'll be able to think clearly, and your mind will be a little more at ease. You won't be staggered breathing. You know, those are usually things that subside. And I said, yeah, but what if I become happy and it negates the need for me to entertain others? You know, or to overcome great obstacles to create some sort of art. And, you know, I said, what if there's no desire anymore to be compulsive about performing and you know, uncompromising? And he just said, that's a very good question. You know? But he said, what I can tell you is all the artists and creative people that he had treated, he said they began to do the best work of their life because now they weren't looking through a prism of shit. You know, they could see things clearer, perceive things better, and analyze basically stuff the same way. And I was afraid I might lose something, you know, if I didn't feel out of whack. But I didn't, and the work got better and better. I mean, I was thinking of horrible scenarios like, hey, you know, doctor, what if back in the slave days they had this stuff and they gave it to the slaves, you know, so they could feel better? I said, would they have sung out their pain in 12-bar blues form, which is the true American art? Would they have been moved to do that, or would they bother not to do that? You know, which blues, which begat jazz, which begat rock and roll? Would the House of Blueses all start disappearing? And, you know, he was just like, he didn't know what to say. I mean, because you know, it's the first thing I thought of. We probably wouldn't have never invented anything if somebody wasn't whacked out somewhere or in pain or, you know, distraught.
And if you had to choose between being happy and being creative, you would have chosen to, like, if that really was the option, would you have chosen to be unhappy and continue to create?
No. I knew in my heart of hearts that something was desperately, desperately wrong, and I didn't even know how to articulate it. You know, and I had all these classic symptoms. It's just that you know, if I entertained the thought, I thought that somehow I was bigger than that and I can fix anything. You know, like, I'll just fix myself, don't worry about it.
Right.
But that was not the case. What I would have rather is I had a horrible childhood. I had my dad was a horror, and he was certifiable, and you know, he tried to kill me like 20 times. I took my first beating in utero, you know, when my dad found out my mom was pregnant. He was drunk, and he just went nuts. You know, he didn't want nothing to do with me, and one time a shrink brought up the fact, you know, I said, I love my dad, I don't know whatever I did to him, or made him angry, and they said, did it ever occur to you that he didn't love you? And that was totally foreign concept to me. How could that possibly be? And yes, it was true. So, you know, I grew up guessing at what normal was.
Wow.
But wherever we sit, wherever you are right now, whatever it is that your assignment is, or whatever your job is, or whoever you're with, it's all the sum totals of everything that happened in your life. And I'm convinced that I had to have gone through everything I went through, or I wouldn't be sitting here right now. You know what I mean? Win, lose, or draw, you're sitting where you're sitting for a reason.
Right. I think that's a good attitude to have. And obviously...
Yeah, either that or have a gun for lunch, you know? What
right.
else?
Yeah.
How else can you think about it?
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm a happy guy, you know, and like I said, I'm just so grateful that, you know, people like what we do.
It's
that I
brilliant.
can work and fulfill. You know, it's always fulfilling to me. I never got jaded. I'm always trying for something new.
That's good. I really, I appreciate you sharing that with me, and I appreciate you talking to me. It's been really great.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, I didn't mention that I was an alcoholic and a drug addict for 2 decades.
Oh, really?
You know, because I couldn't handle bare wires. These horrible feelings, I didn't know what was wrong. They were raw nerve endings that were electrified, like the telephone lines. And the only way I had to treat it was medicate myself. And so I was terrible. I was, not myself in any way, shape, or form once I got going. Although I could play. I don't know how that's possible, but I used to do things in blackouts.
Or like you would play...
Did I play last night? I don't even remember coming home.
Oh, wow. But you would do entire shows and have no recollection.
Yeah, and I worked in radio the first few years that I was in radio. I was in a blackout. And they told me everything I did was amazing and great, but I don't remember a lot of it, because I was there, but I wasn't there.
And have you ever heard any of that stuff? Like, did any of the radio shows record it, or any of your performances?
Yeah, I heard some things, and you know what? They are pretty clever, and you can hear me, A for effort, trying my balls off. But a few of the things, I could hear the coke in my nose. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would think too that,
like when you watch an old Sonny and Cher show from the 70s, you can taste the coke.
Right. I would think too, like, for what you do, I would think being sort of clear-headed and having quick response time would be beneficial, that you would be better, I would think, like, to be able to come up with stuff quickly, especially like when you're doing radio and stuff.
I did somehow.
Yeah.
I did, but I was flying blind. I guess I had so much of, and the gift, that's another thing. I had so much of a gift, and it's like, what an insult to the universe to throw it back in the face of the universe. I could give a shit, about anything back then. I just was like, what am I doing this for? What am I, a clown? I'm going to, tap dance and do, swim in circles. And, I started to resent myself, and it was all low self-esteem, and thinking that somehow you could just rise above that, but that's the state you're in when you're like that. And when you're a druggie and an alkie, there's no future. It's always the past. It's always a downward spiral. That's where you spend most of your time, or in a constant present of nothingness. You can't speculate on the future. You're not living there. You're not even living in the moment you're in. So everything is bleak. And I feel terribly for anybody that's going through this kind of thing, because a lot of it is depression underneath all of it.
Do you still get treatment, or are you kind of?
Oh yeah, I take medication and stuff, but I'm kind of the me I should have been. It's almost like if I could skip 19 years of craziness. I was a good guy. I was a sensitive guy. I was raised by a woman. My mom took 3 kids and moved to Detroit, and I understand a lot about women, how they can be so nurturing and tender, and how disciplinary they have to be, like a sergeant. And so I'm evolved. I leave the toilet seat down, as a matter of fact. I don't mind telling you that.
I appreciate that.
I'm an evolved man. But, I was a good kid. And then I just took a wrong turn, but I feel like I joined that good kid in progress.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were able to get back on track. It definitely sounds like you're in a good place now.